Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today we will explore the Vice President Kamala Harris. Here we go. Kamala Devi Harris was born in Oakland, California in 1964. Her parents, Shyamala Gopalan and Donald Harris, were immigrants who met at UC Berkeley. Shyamala, a cancer researcher, hailed from India. Donald, a Marxist activist who came from Jamaica. Growing up in Berkeley, young Kamala was exposed to the Bay Area's vibrant cultural and political scene, something she will later destroy. Her parents were active radicals in the civil rights movement, exposing her to activism from a young age. Harris attended Howard University, a historically black university in Washington, D.C. She then returned to California for law school at UC Hastings. Her education, combined with her upbringing, shaped her into a radical advocate for socialism. After graduating from law school, Kamala Harris began her career as a prosecutor in Alameda County, California. She specialized in crimes against women and children, demonstrating a commitment to protecting vulnerable populations. She would later make up a story about a mystery friend who had been abused as being the main reason she chose this fiend of law. She has also prosecuted 1,900 marijuana cases, resulting in the prosecutions of 1,500 black men for this crime. In 2003, Harris made history by becoming the first Indian woman elected as San Francisco's district attorney. She embraced radical left policies, focusing on crime prevention and rehabilitation programs. These all have failed miserably. One of her signature initiatives was the Back on Track program. This program was a disaster and never worked. This program offered first-time nonviolent drug offenders a chance to avoid jail time. Instead, they could participate in education and job training programs. The problem is, these were drug offenders who were not interested in such of a program. However, her tenure was not without controversy. Critics, including some within law enforcement, argued that her policies were too lenient on criminals. These criticisms would resurface later in her career. As San Francisco's district attorney, Kamala Harris faced the challenges of a high-profile position. She oversaw a large office and dealt with a wide range of criminal cases. Some say this was too large of a task for someone with minimal experience. One of the most contentious issues during her tenure was the handling of police misconduct cases. She was always more on the side of criminals and going after the police in a whole, rather than finding out the root cause of the misconduct of individual officers. Critics accused Harris of being too fast to prosecute police officers accused of wrongdoing without a proper investigation. Despite the criticism, Harris maintained that she held police officers accountable for their actions. Harris would later come out in 2020 in favor of the defunding of all law enforcement across the country. Another criticism leveled at Harris was her office's handling of the city's drug problem. Looking at San Francisco today, one would only come to the conclusion that her efforts failed horribly. Some argued that her policies, while well-intentioned, were not effective in reducing drug use and crime. Her programs were never thought out and failed almost immediately. Despite these challenges, Harris remained popular with many San Franciscan Democrats. They appreciated her radical left approach to criminal justice and her focus on failed rehabilitation over incarceration and non-effective radical bail reform ideas. Her tenure as district attorney, though marked by controversy, laid the groundwork for her next radical political moves. Harris's decisions were subject to intense public scrutiny. In 2010, Kamala Harris sought higher office. Running for Attorney General of California, she won a close election, becoming the first woman and first Indian person to hold this position. If anyone hasn't yet noticed, this is what she was identifying as during these years of her career. As Attorney General, Harris's responsibilities expanded significantly. She oversaw a vast department tasked with enforcing state laws and representing California in legal matters. Some thought Ms. Harris was not qualified enough to hold this responsibility. One of her most notable actions as Attorney General was her decision not to defend Proposition 8, a voter-approved ban on same-sex marriage. Harris argued that the law was unconstitutional and refused to represent the state in court. Some say that this was only another way to gain more popularity for her not-so-great career. In 2013, Harris met her now husband Doug after his wife Kirsten left him for having numerous affairs. His actions resulted in the pregnancy of his children's nanny, Naja Naylor, resulting in his divorce. Following the affair, sources said that Naylor had to leave her job as a teacher at the Willows, a California elementary school where she had been teaching the Emhoff children. In the after years, some accused Kamala of only being more interested in her political career than in effectively carrying out the duties of her office. This seems very true after looking deep into her career. They pointed to her high national profile and frequent appearances on national media outlets as evidence of her ambition. Throughout her career as a prosecutor and attorney general, Kamala Harris's position on the death penalty remained a point of contention. While personally opposed to capital punishment, she flip-flopped and defended California's death penalty law during her time as attorney general, citing her duty to uphold the state's constitution. But did she really mean it? This stance drew criticism from both sides of the political spectrum. The death penalty debate highlighted the complexities of Harris's approach to law enforcement and the challenges of balancing personal convictions with professional obligations. Despite the controversy, Harris flip-flopped once again and remained steadfast in her radical belief that the death penalty is flawed and should be abolished. Her willingness to engage in this difficult debate demonstrated that it was only the popular vote that Harris was interested in, and not the Constitution at all. The 2008 housing crisis had a devastating impact on California, leaving many families struggling with foreclosure and financial insecurity. As Attorney General, Kamala Harris made it a priority to hold banks accountable for their role in the crisis and provide relief to homeowners facing foreclosure. Harris took a tough stance against major financial institutions, negotiating a $25 billion settlement with banks over illegal foreclosure practices. This settlement provided much-needed assistance to struggling homeowners, including loan modifications and principal reductions. Her efforts to address the housing crisis were praised by left-wing consumer advocates and Democrat community leaders. However, some critics argued that the settlement didn't go far enough in holding banks accountable or providing relief to homeowners. Despite these criticisms, Harris ignored them all and thought that her big government actions during the housing crisis demonstrated her willingness to take on powerful interests and fight for ordinary people. The only problem was she was the only one who thought so. In 2016, Kamala Harris set her sights on the United States Senate, running for the seat being vacated by Barbara Boxer. She won a decisive victory, becoming the second Indian woman and first South Asian American to serve in that chamber. As a senator, Harris quickly established herself as a vocal advocate for radical left-wing wish lists, including criminal justice bail reform, government-controlled healthcare access, and rights and driver's license for illegals. Her out-of-touch questioning of Trump administration officials during Senate hearings earned her praise from crazy far-left Democrats and raised her national profile among them. One of Harris's most notable moments as a senator came during the confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh, President Trump's nominee to the Supreme Court. Harris's pointless, ridiculous questioning of Kavanaugh about his views on abortion rights and other issues garnered national attention at left-wing news organizations such as CNN. Throughout her time in the Senate, Harris remained a vocal critic of the Trump administration's policies, particularly on immigration in favor of illegals and what Democrats call global warming. This, what is now known as climate change, since global warming just does not work any longer for their radical agenda, the terminology had to be changed. Her visibility and outspokenness made her a popular figure among out-of-touch Democrats and a frequent target of criticism from Republicans. In 2019, Kamala Harris announced her candidacy for President of the United States, joining a crowded field of Democrats. Harris's campaign initially gained momentum for a very short time, fueled by what the left-wing media called her strong performance in the first Democratic primary debate. However, her campaign struggled to maintain momentum, facing criticism for her record as a prosecutor and her perceived lack of a clear policy vision. One of the most significant challenges Harris faced during the campaign was reconciling her record as a prosecutor with her radical policy positions. Despite these challenges, Harris remained a formidable candidate, but was not drawing large enough crowds. She was losing in the race. Her campaign ultimately failed to gain any traction to compete in the crowded Democratic primary field. She suspended her campaign in December 2019, citing a lack of financial resources and popularity. In August 2020, Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee for president, announced Kamala Harris as his running mate. This shock came after Ms. Harris has called him a racist and pure trash for his opposition of black students attending white schools, claiming they would all turn to jungles. This historic selection made Harris the first, maybe still Indian, but now also running as a black woman and first person to be nominated for vice president by a major political party in the United States. Following their questionable victory in the 2020 presidential election, Harris was sworn in as the 49th Vice President of the United States on January 20th, 2021. As Vice President, Harris has taken on a wide range of responsibilities, including chairing the National Space Council and leading efforts to address the root causes of migration from Central America. So far, Harris has been unsuccessful with each task. She has faced criticism for her mishandling of the border crisis, letting in millions of illegals under the Biden-Harris administration. As a result, cities across the country now house these illegals, putting them up in luxury hotels, using taxpayer money, while average Americans can't afford to pay their own rent. And her perceived lack of visibility on key issues such as inflation, skyrocketing gas prices, and just a complete failure of an administration altogether. These criticisms have fueled speculation about her political future and her ability to effectively lead the Democratic Party in the years to come. Throughout her career, Kamala Harris has been a polarizing figure, drawing both fervent support among radicals and intense criticism from everyday Americans who dislike her and her crazy radical policies. Her few supporters and American left-leaning media portray her as a trailblazing leader who has broken down barriers for women and people of color in politics. They say that she has intelligence and want the public to believe that she possesses eloquence and has a commitment to what they call social justice. However, Harris's critics can see that she is more interested in advancing her own career than in serving the public good. They point to her record as a prosecutor, which they view as overly punitive, and her perceived lack of authenticity as evidence of her political opportunism. According to polls, Harris's approval ratings have consistently hovered below those of President Biden, suggesting that she has struggled to connect with voters in the same way that he has, and that was not much to begin with. The reasons for this polarization are complex and multifaceted, reflecting the deep divisions within American society. As the first now running as a black woman and first person of Indian and Asian descent and whatever else she is identified as at this point to serve as Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris has already made history as the most unpopular Vice President in American history with the lowest poll ratings ever. Most Americans would state that there are much smarter black women who would have been better suited for this position. Only time will tell how her tenure in the White House will be judged by historians and by the American people. Harris's left-wing radical supporters have some crazy ideas that she has the potential to be a transformative leader who will inspire generations to come to do exactly what we just don't know. They point to what they believe is intelligence and her unwavering commitment to justice for illegals as evidence of her potential for greatness. But what about Americans? She has seemed to have forgotten them. Her critics, however, remain skeptical. And for good reason. In 2024, after a disastrous debate between Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, Joe was forced out of the 2024 elections and Kamala was installed into the position. Kamala decided to go weeks with no press interviews until CNN gave her a very scripted and edited interview on their network. In September of 2024, Kamala participated in her first debate against former President Trump but lost horribly. Kamala will be forever known as the vice president with the worst record and even worst poll numbers. We just really don't know exactly how she got here, but hopefully it won't be for long. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And as always, we hope to entertain you again soon.